unstoppable kick-ass confidence. Are you ready?
Welcome to the Raw and Unscripted Show with Christopher Rausch, where we help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. Now please welcome our host, Christopher Rausch.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to the Raw Unscripted Show. It is Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, your place where I help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. And I'm excited to be here with you guys, whether you're guys watching on live on the video cast, you're listening on the audio podcast. Thank you so much for being here. We have been doing this now for quite a number of years. Actually, I was just thinking about this tonight. My show will celebrate its 4th anniversary in January. We actually started January 2019. It was we started a week before I did my major back surgery, so it's coming up on 4 years. So thank you guys all for joining in on us. We're actually on episode tonight. We are on episode number, what number are we on tonight? Episode number, well, fiddlesticks. Where did that go? That doesn't do you any good when you want to see it, and it's not right up there when you want to see it. You know what I mean? I think we're on show, I'm bad at numbers. We are on show number 240. 240. So we've done 240 shows of this particular show, the Raw Unscripted Show. Then we've also got the Unfiltered Experience, which I do on Friday nights. That one, I think we're up to 225 shows, something like that. It's crazy. And then if you guys want to really go back in time, you guys could go back to my original talk show, which was the Kick-Ass Radio Show. That was something that I did on Blog Talk Radio back in the day. I did that for 3 years, and there's a couple hundred shows of that as well. If you actually go on to Apple Podcasts or you go on to any of the podcast platforms and you type in the Kick-Ass Radio Show, my show will still come up. It's pretty crazy. I was actually surprised when I checked that out not too long ago. I'm like, wow. And there's some really great interviews in there. We did some powerful discussions in there. So at any rate, thank you guys all for joining us. Appreciate you being here, whether you're live or on the replay. As always, feel free to ask the guest questions. Ask me questions. This is an interaction between all three of us, me, you, and my guest, and we're just kicking it at a coffee shop or a bar. And so if you have a guest, if you have a question and you're not live, by all means, leave the question, tag Mark in it, and we'll make sure it gets answered. Or if it's a question for me, we'll make sure it gets answered for you guys as well. So we appreciate you guys. And I've known my guest here for a number of years, if not a decade. We were just talking about when he launched his podcast back in 2014, and we were just talking about that. It's crazy how fast time goes by. And so I'm interested in this conversation tonight. We've titled the show starting a successful business on a shoestring budget, which is interesting because that tagline goes to a buddy of mine way back in the day. He was writing books on how to start this on a shoestring budget, how to become a marketer on a shoestring budget, how to do this on a shoestring budget. So anyways, welcome to the show, Mr. Marc Mawhinney. What's up, Marc Mawhinney? Welcome to the Raw Unscripted Show, man.
Living the dream. I've got a few more grays since the last time I was on here, but that's life. But no, thank you for having me back on. And yeah, it's crazy. It's been almost a decade since we've known each other. So yeah.
I mean, and that's one of the things I really love about you, Mark, is the fact that during that period of time, is you've always remained Mark. And obviously I'm all about authenticity. I'm all about like just being the real version of ourselves. Talk to us about that. I mean, you've been through a lot in the last 10 years, in launching your brand. I mean, previously, I think you were into real estate. You were in selling houses and stuff like that. You were in sales.
Yeah. Through my 20s, I spent about 10 years in real estate. So it's funny. I see a lot of similarities between real estate and coaching, which is
really?
You wouldn't expect that, but yeah, there's a lot of crossover, believe it or not. But that's my past life. I spent about 10 years there, and I got started coaching in 2014, and here we are.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the similarities are between real estate and coaching?
I mean, there's a lot between boundaries is one thing. Real estate's one of those areas that I'm an admitted workaholic, and I blame real estate for putting a lot of bad habits into me through my 20s. But you have to be able to enforce boundaries. If not, you're going to work 24/7. You're going to accept pay that's less. Like, in real estate, you always have people beating you up for your commissions. Back in the day where I'm at in Canada, the standard commission was 6%. I know it's lower now. And I used to always have people say, oh, are you flexible or negotiable on that? So I would say, yeah, sure, I'll take 7%. Push hard, the carbon's cheap, another real estate trainer used to say, and make a joke about it. But you do have to maintain your boundaries. And the same thing goes with coaching. If you're not careful, you're going to be working for free. You're going to be working with people that maybe aren't energizing you. You're not having fun dealing with, and then it's not going to be enjoyable. So I'm really big on you have to have fun building your business. I think that's huge.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's super fun because it's got to get you through those darker times. And it's got to have, I tell people, like, when you have a big enough why, you have a big enough how. And some
Yeah.
of those days where you're in the trenches, like even for me, I left a successful corporate career making a lot of money. There's still every once in a while, because I miss working with people, I miss building teams. And that's what I was talking about with you prior to us going live, was the fact that I'm looking to go back into business stuff and consulting, because I actually miss building teams and working alongside people. I don't want to go back to a traditional day job, but if I could get a consulting contract, maybe it might be a couple of months, go in there and streamline their operations, their corporate culture and stuff like that. That kind of excites me because, at the end of the day, when we're business entrepreneurs, sometimes we think the glamour and the glitz of having our own business and creating our own streams of income and things of that nature, being able to put our stamp on it, is going to be the thing that gets us through. But sometimes we have to look at other areas of our life, because sometimes that stuff gets old and monotonous. When you think about starting a business, I mean, we talked about this, it's titled Starting a Business on a Shoestring Budget. What are some other parameters that people should really give great thought to that sometimes may be overlooked?
It's funny they mentioned with being in front of people. That's one thing I miss with real estate. I was big on the whole camaraderie in an office. We did hockey pools, Survivor pools back in the day when Survivor was the big show.
Yeah.
I was joking around with you. It's almost midnight my time here. The advantage, I'm now wearing pajama pants underneath this, where it's almost midnight. So there are pros and cons. I can wear pajama pants, slippers in the winter and not have to go out and shovel and drive somewhere. So you're asking about the things for building business on a shoestring? Is that it?
Yeah. What are some other people should look at? I mean, obviously you got to have something that you're passionate in, but what are some of the other things that, especially this day and age, that maybe perhaps are overlooked? Like maybe the decline, with digitization and things of that nature, people shouldn't necessarily be going into graphic artistry, I wouldn't think.
Well, the challenge, I deal specifically with coaches, so I'm in the coaching world, and the issue that we have here is a lot of people entering the coaching world think, oh, I'll slap a website up, and then people will rush to the website and they'll hire me. And I always say it's the 80-20 rule. They expect to be coaching 80% of the time. The other 20% is filling some back end stuff, a little bit of paperwork, a little bit of marketing, but 80% is coaching. When what it's like, Chris, it's the opposite, right? It's 80-20, 80% finding clients or more, and then 10 or 20% actually doing that work. And I'm seeing that even more now versus say pre-COVID. I heard a stat the other day: 2.5 million coaches are entering the coaching world every year. So the last 4 years, it's been 10 million. And it's changed an awful lot. So you can't just come in and expect, slap up a website and people will gravitate to it. It doesn't work that way with it. You got to put some effort in to do some different things to go get those clients.
Yes, I wanted to talk to you about that, Mark, because we know during COVID, everybody became a coach and a speaker. I was just talking with a friend of mine who's been in the speaking industry for over 30 years. And I said, what's going on with the speaking industry? I said, I listed with a couple of speaker, websites, speaker promoting agencies. I said, I was with them for 6 months. I was with the 2 different ones and they said they didn't get me any jobs. He goes, yeah, everything's completely changed because of COVID. He goes, a lot of the stages now are pay to play. So basically you're not getting paid to speak anymore. The way you're making money is you're doing the back of the room sales, you're selling your courses and stuff of that nature. And it really seems like it's a shame, because I know when I first got into coaching, legitimately back in 2008, I think that's when I legitimately launched Master Motivators and was like, oh, I can get paid for doing stuff like this. And I went to a couple of multi-speaker events and I realized pretty quickly I got into personal development because I could use my story and help other people shift their perspective about their past, present, and their future. I could take my story of being homeless on the streets and I could help people change their trajectory of their life and be able to really be empowered with themselves and to take those risks and go out there and make changes. But then I was quickly disappointed when I went to some of these speaker events and I saw the Brian Tracy's of the world and the Mark Victor Hansons of the world and some of the other people, the big players in the world. And I realized they were more into it for the money and for the egoic validation than actually to help people. And that really bummed me out because I thought everybody was getting into this to help people. What are some of the things that you've seen change, Mark? I mean, you've been around the business now for quite a while. You're known as one of the people that connects people with your podcast, Natural Born Coaches, and things of that nature. What are some of the things that you've seen change since COVID? And do you think it's been for the better?
Oh, boys. Not a lot of coaches will admit this, but it's gotten more challenging to get business. You have to put more effort into, in some cases, to get the clients. So it's not the case, years ago when I got started, a lot of times people would slap up a sales page and cold traffic would go over and bang, they're buying. They don't know you. They're going to whip out their credit card. They're going to buy. And it just isn't like that now. What I'm seeing is a lot of skepticism in the coaching world because there's a lot of people who have bad experiences in the last few years with coaches, and they're bringing that into the current conversation with you. And they're thinking, well, gee, that's great what you're saying, Chris, but I got burned by this person, I got burned by that one, and so on. And it's almost like relationships. If you're dating someone who's had a bad string of exes, and then they don't trust you because of the crappy experience from their exes, and you have to try to work your way around it. So not saying everyone, but there is more, which is good in a way. Like a healthy skepticism is not a bad thing. I think people should be skeptical online. I always say my rule of thumb with online is to assume everyone's full of crap until they prove me wrong. So I know you're not full of crap and there's other people, but I have a healthy skepticism, I like to think, as well with it. So that's definitely changed. And I would also say you can't just expect paint by numbers. People are selling these systems and you see AI too, like people, hey, you can create whole programs, courses, you can do all stuff with AI or, just paint by numbers. And I do think that there's going to be a swing towards people looking for, I know it's a buzzword to say people who are authentic, coaches, entrepreneurs who are authentic, but if you're authentic, people can't copy you. And that's, with some of the stuff, I have a very dry sense of humor. Some people my son knows my dad jokes and, lame sense of humor. I like comic book movies. I got my Stan Lee here, and I've got, at least once or twice a day, I'm saying that's what she said. I got Michael Scott here from The Office. But that's me, right? Like that's my sense of humor. So if people try to copy my lame, dry sense of humor, it's going to be kind of weird. And I do think there's a yearning for people to deal with real people, not just those copying and pasting and carrying on with paint by numbers type of system.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. And that's one of the things I pride myself on. I mean, you've known me for a number of years now. You've known me since before, or I don't think you knew me when I was a suit and tie speaker, because I've basically been owning the Kick-Ass brand and the No Excuses brand now for, at least since 2013. I think I made the shift somewhere around 2010. Somewhere right around there, because I know I started the Kick-Ass radio show in 2013. I ended it in 2016. I went through some shit in 2016. But to your point, Mark, that's one of the things that I find so many people are gravitating towards me for, and it's has been, for quite a number of years, is they watch me for a while and they tell me they're scared of me because they're afraid I'm going to yell at them, which I never yell at anybody. I'm just very direct with it, with a huge heart. I will tell people the truth of what the situation there is, if they continue to fuck themselves over. I will be very gentle and kind and bring that elimination to their awareness so they can change that. But people just sit there and say, you know what, Chris, you're just so real. Like you're always the same person, whether it's a family thing you're posting or whether you're posting Raw Unscripted or you're doing your show or you're doing a video or you're doing a walk and talk, you're always the same person, Chris. And I'm like, well, that's all I can ever be, because that's who I chose to be. I chose to let go of the person that I thought I needed to be in order to be successful. I let go of the egoic Chris and the person who had to be the smartest person in the room, Chris. And I said, now I'm just like Chris. And so I don't have to worry about what it is that I say that I do, because I know that my actions will speak for my words and everything else, because that congruency, that authenticity. And I think that's one of the biggest holes that I find in the personal development, the personal growth space now, is there's so many con artists. I mean, I would listen to them on Clubhouse. I was a part of Clubhouse back when it was invitation only, and it was like a lot of people in there doing really, really great stuff at a point where my faith in humanity was declining at an exponential rate. Right. And I was just thinking, like, everybody's just stupid. Everybody's fucked up. We had the political shit going on with the elections and everything else. And I would go into this place called Clubhouse that everybody told me I needed to be in. And I was just blown away that, the different faces you would see on the screen from all walks of life, nobody asking like, who did you vote for? Or what's your position on the vaccine? Everybody was just pouring into one another, just trying to get people through this thing called COVID. But then I was going into these rooms and these people that were like, scamming people and telling them to buy their programs and, and try to get them into their funnel systems and everything else. When you could clearly tell that they had no business being in coaching. You could sit there and telling, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And anybody who's been around a coach knows that coaches don't tell you what to do. Coaches will ask you questions and get you to come to the answer and the realization on your own so that you own that situation. Every once in a while, I as a coach will sit there and say, Mark, can I give you some insight? Can I give you my perspective on the situation? And then you get the permission from that person. And so many people I found in Clubhouse were just like, you need to do this and you need to do this, and making people feel stupid if they didn't buy their products and their courses. And then of course, fast forward, I know a lot of people that were on Clubhouse that said, a lot of people got scammed. And I get people coming to me even like, oh yeah, I hired a coach a couple of years ago and they were a 25-year-old relationship coach. And I'm like, well,
I never got into Clubhouse, and everyone said, was it January of 21? It was a big deal. I think it was.
Yeah.
Everyone said you had to be in Clubhouse, and I did try it once. This is when people were selling invites, right? It was that popular with it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling this. Not saying everyone, there were a lot of douchepreneurs. I guess there's a lot of douchepreneurs online everywhere, right? Like every platform. For me to sit, like I know someone who's on Clubhouse that was on there 8 hours a day. He's like, oh, it was great. I got a client last month from it. And I'm like, well, how long do you spend on there? Oh, I don't know, 8 hours a day. Okay, well, you just spent, you're spending 40 hours a week or whatever, times 4 weeks. That's a lot of time to spending on Clubhouse for one client. And I saw a similar thing. This drives me nuts with the online space. The lemmings, the lack of original thought with Threads. This past July, everyone, oh, you got to be on Threads. Mark Zuckerberg's doing, and oh, it's so great. I get to dunk on Elon all day and all that. And I'm like, Elon Musk doesn't care that you're on Threads dunking on him. Work on your, I don't know, PG-13. Work on your fucking business. Don't worry about Elon Musk or whatever. And I saw people on my list that were all, oh my God, it's so cool or whatever. It's like Twitter without the drama and all that. I'm like, it's social media. There's going to be drama regard. And I guess there wasn't drama on Threads because it was pretty much dead right away. So they probably wanted drama. And it died quickly. I never even checked it out once. I'm like, nope, I don't need another social media platform or whatever. And it drives me nuts when people say you have to do something. I'm really big on pick a couple things that work well, focus on those instead of just running to the next flavor of the month and doing that because people say you're supposed to do it. Both Clubhouse and Threads were dumb. They're dead. Like, and I'm patting myself on my back that I never actually spent time on either of them.
I found, I can definitely understand your perspective on that. I found that for me, Clubhouse, like I said, reestablished my faith in humanity, and especially at a time where everybody was calling people's names. We had the murder of George Floyd, and it really reestablished my faith in humanity. That people were really out there to help one another, and it wasn't all about sides. And if you're a Trump supporter, you're an idiot, or if you're a Biden supporter, you're an asshole, and just all this different stuff. I found a lot of people in there were really true and genuine. I made a lot of quality friendships out of that. It's just a shame that it had to get infiltrated by the assholes and the con artists and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think, going back to original point, and you've demonstrated this as well, I've demonstrated this, when we're true to ourselves and we're true to those core values, right? Talk to us about that. Do you think business owners really care about their values anymore? Or is it all just about the bottom line number and getting that egoic validation to say, oh, I got another client?
Well, about Clubhouse, I think maybe it's hard on it. I got spoiled because when I listen to podcasts and audiobooks, I go at 2x speed. So maybe I'm impatient, and I think they changed the actual speed that you can do in Clubhouse. So that's different. But it's tough to think too much about values if a business owner is also worrying about paying the bills, right? And it's very tempting if, oh, geez, I have to go do this because the guru told me I have to do this to get clients. So it sounds great. It's, very utopian type view to always think about your values and stuff. But there's also the real world, right? With actually paying the bills. Ironically, you will pay the bills better when you stick to your values as opposed to taking shortcuts. But it's very hard to do that when bills are coming due, especially, the last few years with crazy inflation. I'm in Canada. It's not going much better here with the gas prices and, grocery stores and political leadership. So,
right.
But yeah, at the end of the day, I will say I'm harsh on online people like the gurus and the people we talked about, but I've met, like yourself included, a really ton of great people, that are very sincere people that want to do good, that aren't in it for a quick buck. And that's why they've made it for as long as you have, as long as I have. is that they're not just in there. And you've probably seen them too. I know a lot of people that got in 2016, 2017, and they tried to make a quick dollar. They're nowhere to be found.
No.
Or they jump from trend to trend. They jump to Bitcoin, then AI and everything else or whatever, because they were great at getting the first sale, but they weren't very good at getting referrals, repeat business, and all the other stuff. So people talk. It's a small online world. You really need to be able to perform and get results for people if you want to get those things like repeat business and referrals.
It's true, and your reputation is living online. I just want to grab a couple of people's comments. We got Darlene in the house. She's saying, "Am I the first one here?"
Hey,
you're definitely the first one. What's up, Darlene? Thank you for being here. Got my sister Debbie Bettendorf in the house. What's up? She's I'm glad I'm able to catch this. Appreciate you being here, Debbie. Feel free to ask any questions. We're talking about business.
That's your actual sister. Does she have any embarrassing stories? Is that your actual sister or no?
No. Debbie, no, she's my sister from another mister.
Oh, okay. I thought it was your actual sister. We're going to ask if there's any embarrassing childhood stories or whatever, but okay.
No, my real sister I don't talk to anymore, and we hardly spend any time together anyway. But I have lots of sisters from other misters. But when you think about the conversation tonight, Mark, and starting a business and being in the trenches and leaving our comfortable days jobs and our comfortable misery, what do you think are some of the real critical components for people to get across from this conversation tonight? When they think about starting a business, obviously it's not all roses and rainbows and sunshine and unicorns and stuff like that. What are some applicable strategies that people really need to consider when starting business? I mean, now AI is such a huge thing. I was dead set against it. I was like, I'm not going on ChatGPT. I feel like I'm cheating. And then I had a few of my key friends who are very smart people, very, very wealthy people. They're like, Chris, the difference between people who use AI and don't use AI are the people that are going to keep their jobs. Sure, AI is going to replace people's jobs, but the sooner you can start implementing it in your business and your marketing and things of that nature, that's one of the new critical components. What are some of the other ones that people really need to pay attention to when they're starting a business these days?
Well, this is more a mindset flip. If you don't have a huge budget, and I know this is tough to do, but you have to play a bit of a Jedi mind trick. My son and I were watching Star Wars: A New Hope earlier tonight. Before Disney wrecked Star Wars, I won't get started there. The good Star Wars from when I was a kid.
Right.
So it's a bit of a Jedi mind trick that you have to view having not a big budget, being on a shoestring budget, as being a plus. And you might be thinking, well, gee, how's it a plus starting a business? So when I got started coaching, I was a few years out of a business closure with real estate, where I was always used to having a lot of money, a lot of resources to invest back into my business. That's how my real estate took off. I was buying a ton of advertising and everything else. So when I started coaching, I was like, oh man, I wish I had the war chest to invest into coaching. The only thing I could do is roll up my sleeves and get to work, get my message out there, writing, getting my content going, or whatever. At the time, I thought it was a negative, but the silver lining in there is it forced me to, as I said, roll up my sleeves and get to work and actually work on my content. And I got really disciplined and really good at creating my message because I had to, as opposed to people I know when I got started that had money from, maybe they took a package from corporate America to get out of that. So they're sitting on, tens of thousands of dollars. They're like, oh, I'll shortcut it and I'll put it into ads or into hiring a copywriter and all this other stuff. Well, then you don't have the experience of actually doing those things. So I know it's difficult, but I would look at being on a shoestring. It can be turned into a positive versus people that can get a little bit lazy if you've got a big, budget, money sitting there and stuff. You're not as hungry. It's not as real for you there. And not to knock people that have those, because there's people that can be successful, but I think there can be some positives from going in on a shoestring budget.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have, when you have leverage in there, when you have to make your bills. I know for me, when I first started, when I left my corporate job in November of 2019, for the first little bit, I was kind of taking it easy. I'm like, okay, I was like still looking for another job because I made great money. And then it was probably after I submitted about 100 resumes over a period of about 3 or 4 months. And I was seeing that there wasn't anything coming up. And I was like, well, maybe God's source universe is trying to tell me something, like, Chris, you've been doing coaching and speaking as a side hustle for the last 20 years. Maybe this is an opportunity for you to leave corporate once and for all. Maybe this is a sign. And so that's when I decided, like, it was like February 23rd. It was a couple of days before my birthday, where I went to my wife and I said, hey, listen, I've got this money. We have separate finances. And I said, I've got this money saved up and I want to go do my coaching and my speaking full time. And she's like, let's do it. Let's do it. You should do it. You should do it. And then March 20th hit, and it was like COVID time. And it was like everything got derailed and changed around. But when you have that skin in the game, you know, when there's a little bit of a fire in your belly to make sure that it happens, that can really mean a lot of the difference, because so many times we think, oh, that I'm gonna build this website, like you said, I'm gonna build this website, and everybody's gonna come and say, oh my God, I want Chris's coaching. I want Chris's coaching. But now, especially with the workforce, you know, the coaching industry being so overpopulated with so many new coaches, there's got to be that brand differentiation, like we're saying, you know, like, how do we set ourselves apart, and what are some of the other things that we need to be focusing on? You know, having that leverage in there to be able to go out there and take those chances and to give those extra hours. You know, I talk about with my clients, you know, what is your best, right? And we think about as entrepreneurs, oh, I'm doing the best I can. I've been doing the best I can. But so many chances we're probably not doing our best, right? Have you run into entrepreneurs who are saying that they're doing the best they can, but then after working with them, you've been able to find, you know, 20 or 30 or 40% more best that they didn't realize that they were doing?
What I find often because I deal specifically with coaches, they think they're doing more than maybe they are. And I don't mean that they're not busy, but I've had clients before that I'll say, how many times did you offer? Were you consistently putting your offer out every day? Oh, yeah, I was, sure. And I'm on their email list. I'll do a search, and it's been like one email in the last 3 weeks. And it's been like one or two social media posts in the last week. I'm like, that's not daily. I'm really big. I do daily emails. You've seen me social media every day. I'm making offers, invitations for people to get my help and to invest in my services. And I do it unapologetically. I got crapped on by one of your American neighbors with Thanksgiving that just passed for the US. I'm in Canada, so we celebrate in October. Right. So I posted a sales post on Thanksgiving in my Facebook group, and the guy's like, oh, really, Mark? On Thanksgiving, give it a break. And I said to him, you troll people doing Black Friday sales too, but that guy in the group is a perfect example of the issue that's with a lot of coaches and online entrepreneurs. They're looking for excuses not to sell. I better not sell. It's Sunday, so it's a day of rest. Or I better not sell. It's Thanksgiving. Or I better not sell. We're getting close to Christmas. I'll wait till the new year. And they're making excuses not to sell. For me, I'm making offers every day, you know, like, and it gets easier after you've been doing it for a while. It takes a little getting used to, but that's something I'm really big on with my clients. And that's what I'm seeing out there. Coaches, online entrepreneurs, they're not making nearly enough offers, and they're doing things to keep busy. They think they're working on their logo, their banner, of their website, you know, everything else. But at the end of the day, it's like if you had a store on Main Street and you had the fancy sign in the front, and the floors are all waxed and everything else, but people go in and there's nothing on the shelves. You're not going to stay in business very long. You have to make sure that you're selling stuff. So I'm a capitalist, a proud capitalist. I wish more online entrepreneurs were unapologetic with putting their services out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is it's that I've learned that sales to me it used to sound like, you know, sleazy, almost like, oh, car salesman, and like, oh, I got to make the sale and I got to, you know, sit there and do that stuff. When somebody pointed it to me to become an offer, like you're making an offer, you're selling the solution to what that person needs. You're making an offer. For me, that switched my whole psychology, you know, towards sales. Like, oh, I don't want to make sales. And, you know, and asking for that sale was, I mean, I'm talking 10, 15 years ago. But being able to see it as, okay, I'm providing a solution. I'm providing a solution to people who are coming to me saying they don't have confidence, or they're sitting in their comfort zone, and they want to go take more chances and overcome their fears and change their perspective about things. That I have the keys to unlock these people's futures. And so for me, when I shifted that, I totally changed my whole perspective on sales and making offers instead, and being that solution provider for people. Like, you can either take it or you can't. I mean, you could try to do it on your own and come back to me in 3 or 4 years and realize that what could probably take 18 months working with me is going to take you probably 6 or 7 years. If you have
to sell to help, right? And I'll give you an example. My email list, I've been emailing it daily since April 2016. So it's somewhere close to 3,000 days, give or take. I think it's a little under 3,000 days.
Yep, I'm on the list.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. But I get very little blowback. You would think emailing daily to thousands of people, I'm going to be getting 10 death threats and 100 unsubscribes and, all sorts of blowback. Very rarely do I get people emailing me, like they may leave the list and that's fine. I'd rather them if that I don't resonate with them and they're not into daily, that's totally cool, but that's my business, the way I do it. And so I remember I was in your neck of the woods in California speaking at an event pre-COVID, and Guy Kawasaki, who was with Apple, started at Canva or whatever. He did a bunch of stuff. He was speaking at the same event. I sat in his whole talk, and he was telling the story how with his Facebook fan page, he did an experiment. He had something like 450,000 fans on the page. And he decided he was going to post the exact same word for word post twice in one day. So morning, then later in the day. He was curious how many people would complain. Do you know out of almost 500,000 fans, how many complained about him posting the exact same?
Probably 3.
Very close, 2, if I remember right. So 2 out of 500,000 complained. So you don't have to worry if you've got 500 people on your email list or even 5,000, whatever. You're not going to get a ton of people complaining about it. They're busy or whatever. It's also a noisy space. Sometimes I say repeat myself. I'll repackage content and put it elsewhere, or it's something maybe I shared a year ago, 2 years ago. It's not like I've ever had anyone say, "Hey, Mark, you emailed this out 3 years ago. I remember this exact email." Now they don't remember. So you have to be unapologetic. It's tough to do it. I'd recommend a book. Have you read The Alter Ego Effect, Todd Herman?
No, I haven't. I'm going to write that down, though. The Alter Ego Effect?
Yeah. I'll get a pitch out for Todd. He's a fellow Canadian. So he's been on my show, and he wrote that book, which is in my top 10. And that whole book is about adopting an alter ego, almost like an actor. You pick, could be a real person that you admire. You want to adopt their traits, or maybe you combine traits from a few different people, or you make up an alter ego, just like Magic Johnson's a good example. Again, I'll give a California example. He was you would think a man about town, real confident from those great Lakers teams in the 80s, all that stuff. But he was actually very shy. Irvin Johnson wasn't who you think Magic going out to the clubs and, with all the women. He was actually very shy with it. He had to adopt the whole Magic persona. And Beyonce has, I think, Tasha Fierce is her whole thing whenever she goes on stage. And you have to do that online as well, in a way, come up with, at least read the book. I recommend The Alter Ego Effect, but you have to turn it up a notch and really push yourself out there, because if not, you're not going to get seen and you're going to get passed over, and people are going to hire or buy from people who aren't as good as you are. And then that's not good for anyone.
No, you definitely got to have some mojo in this game. What do you recommend to people? What do you recommend to people who have spent their entire lives basically talking negatively to themselves? They're sitting there watching this conversation. They're listening to this conversation between you and I. They're inspired, like, hey, I want to do something on Etsy, or I want to do something on Shopify, or I've got some of these ideas, but all my entire life I've failed at everything that I've ever done. And for me to just stay in my lane as a secretary or something like that, that's probably what I should do. What pieces of advice do you have, Mark, for people who've been down that road, and we're talking about being unapologetic? How do we get them to build that self-confidence muscle, to be able to sit there and say, not in a flippant way, to say, listen, I'm not going to give a shit about what anybody thinks anymore, but also at that same time, like I do, like I just wish people well. Like, if you dig me and you get me, great, no problem. If you don't get the whatever, then go find somebody you do, because the world's big. What advice do you have for people to be able to build that strength and that resiliency muscle?
This advice from the Fonzie, not me. I just read Henry Winkler's autobiography, so it's great. But anyway,
you finished it now, so okay, we can talk about that. Okay, good.
Yeah, I finished it. I don't know, a few weeks ago, a month ago. Yeah, so he talks about in it. He when he had such enormous success on Happy Days as Fonzie, after the series got done, he was typecast, and he was going through a real rough time because no one wanted to hire him. They just viewed him as Fonzie, right? Mm-hmm. And he says in there that he would always make an effort to stop a negative thought in his head before he had a chance to think it or to say it to someone else. He would just literally stop, and people kind of look at him a little bit weird, like, what's going on? So it's tough to guard your thoughts, because people have, I think it's about 60,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah.
And the vast majority are either negative or neutral. They're certainly not positive. So I know that it can sound lame to say think positive or whatever, but you do have to be a guard for those thoughts to catch yourself. I catch myself sometimes too with stinking thinking, like was it Zig Ziglar was talking about that whole stinking thinking. That's natural. In the online space, you can have any entrepreneur. You could have your day starts off great. Mid-morning, you get hit with some bad news. You're in a funk. Oh, things get better at 3 p.m. Oh, joy, or whatever. Just before you settle down for bed, you get a bad email. It's like, holy jeez, the entrepreneur roller coaster that Darren Hardy talks about, and it is a real mind f.
Oh, you could say it.
Mind fuck. Yeah, it screws with your head as an entrepreneur. And I've been in business for myself since I was 21, so it's coming up to 25 years. So it's a little easier now because it's not my first rodeo. But still, I have to remind myself sometimes too, like, oh, Mark, smarten up, and sometimes it means turning your business brain off. Just recently, like, it sounds bad. I sound like I'm a 16-year-old kid. I haven't played video games much for years, right? And I started playing the new Spider-Man game on PS5 at night when I need to turn my brain off because I'm a workaholic. I could very easily justify working till 2 a.m. every morning, right? And working 100 and some hours a week. So once I got done my work and stuff, I'm like, I'm going to swing around New York and fix crime and beat up some bad guys and just turn my brain off for an hour, before bed or whatever. So don't feel like you have to work 24/7. And it's funny because I actually do better when I'm not as stressed and feeling like I have to work 24/7. When I do some other things besides work, I come back refreshed as well. So if you're thinking negative and stuff, I don't know if it's getting out for a walk, a drive, it's going to a movie, doing something that's not business related. Because if you're stewing in it, you're ruminating, that's probably not going to help. And it's a challenge for coaches because a lot of us like to journal. We like to think. We like to try to think through it. But by doing that, you can't see the forest for the trees all the time. And you have to juggle self-care there as well. So I'm not saying you have to go be Peter Parker and Spider-Man and go, beat up the bad guys, but whatever you have to do, take your mind off it at night, do it.
It's true. And so there's something to that point. I actually have a PS3 right in front of me. And one of my biggest things that I loved for a while was Fight Night, was the Mike Tyson games, the boxing games. Yeah. And so sometimes when I'd be having a rough day, I would flip on my TV. I have a TV right in front of me. And I would go in there and I play a couple of rounds of boxing and I would just whoop the shit out. Like I would just pick some guy that I know I could whoop. And a couple of rounds after that, you feel like, oh yeah, I can do this. I'm sure some women might be watching this or listening to this going, okay, there's that testosterone, masculine stuff, like whatever it is that you can do. But you're right, Mark, we need a break from those things because so oftentimes, like you said, you can't see the forest for the trees. I tell people you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. And so getting that distance, what I personally do is I either listen to music or I go for a walk or I go for a drive, because I have found that either a shower or a drive is where I do my best thinking. And so sometimes I'll just go take a 45-minute drive. I'll put on a playlist that I have called In the Car. So there are songs that you like to listen to while you're driving in the car, Old Eddie Money or 38 Special, something like that. And I just go out there and I just let my mind relax, because for me, meditating is like, it's still not the panacea that most people think it is. I still do it because I figure one of these days it's going to lock in for me and I'm going to be able to find that space where I just relax and I'm in that Zen zone. But for me, it's going out and separating myself from that experience and listening to some music or talking with some friends about it. But we got to check out, because so many times we're so knee deep into it that we don't give ourselves a break and we burn out that muscle. And so when I think about, the way business has been, especially for the last couple of years with COVID and everything, and then just previously to that, and I think about the generational differences in our world today, back 5-10 years ago, probably about 10 years ago, baby boomers were the largest demographic in the workplace. Gen Xers, my generation, our generation, was the smallest because that was the smallest generation. Then after that, we had the millennials, which was going to be the next largest generation since the baby boomers. And now 10 years fast forward, so many of those baby boomers have retired. And now the Gen Xers are in the leadership position, but we're the smallest majority of any demographic that's been around in recent decades, recent histories. What for you, long-winded way to ask a question, what has it been for you? What have you seen in the generational differences between, being in this industry now for 10 years and seeing the baby boomers getting out of it, and now seeing a lot of the millennials and the Gen Zers getting into it? Are you finding there's drastic differences between the generations?
Between us and the boomers, or us and the millennials?
Us and the millennials. Yeah. The younger generation.
Wow. Well, one of the things I'm decided not to do is I really don't want to be on TikTok twerking. You don't want to see me twerking, Chris, or doing like duck lips and doing all that.
Mark.
Like,
go Mark.
Yeah. I'm convinced if I was a beautiful 21-year-old blonde female model looking, I would be worth tens of millions of dollars by now. And I joke around, but you do see it's interesting. The coaching world, you know, as a middle-aged dude with a beard or whatever, it's not always the best way to do it. It doesn't always catch attention, right? Like versus a 22-year-old blonde bombshell life coach or whatever with it. But yeah,
like your girlfriend.
Yeah, well, that's my ex. Actually, we broke up 1.5 years ago. So yeah.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, no worries. That's okay. That's good. Yeah, good point. But yeah, that's a whole other show. I'll come back next week. I'll talk about her now. Just joking. Yeah, I think I don't want to paint all millennials and Gen Zers with the same brush, but there is. I've been really big on having selling not the sizzle but the steak, having something behind it, right?
Yeah.
And I do find, and this isn't just those newer generations, I think there's probably some Gen Xers as well like this that are so concerned with selling the sizzle, getting the sale, then people actually start whatever program, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
You know, so some of the people I've bought a lot from and I've learned from, I mean, Ben Settle with email comes to mind. Ben has stuff. It's steak, not sizzle, you know, like there's a lot of stuff behind the curtain that he's selling. And that's why I've spent a lot of money invested in him and so on. And I do find that a lot of the younger people just want to be like famous. They don't care how, right? Or if they're providing value out there. And I know I probably sound like an old fuddy-duddy or whatever, but
getting old, Mark.
Yeah, get off my lawn, you know, like
get off my lawn.
Shaking my newspaper, chasing kids off my lawn. But that's why I got off TikTok. I was never big on it. I did a few TikToks and I'm like, yeah, this isn't my thing. I also got off it, and this is probably another topic, but I deleted it from my phone because I found it incredibly distracting. They're very good at sucking you in, knowing what type of content you like, and then showing it to you. And you can easily waste an hour swiping your finger up to videos, watching it. And then there's a whole bunch of privacy things. So for me, I'm like, no, not getting into it with it. But I do find the newer generations, it's not the same level of concentration or attention. They just want instant success. They want to be famous. They don't care how. And they're not concerned with actually giving a quality product behind there. And I think that's a mistake. And I hope the pendulum swings back to that or whatever. So
I think it will. I think it has to. I think that's just kind of like the law of physics in a way, you know, in the business world, that I think that there's going to be so many people that jumped into coaching. I don't know about you. I'm sure. I think we kind of talked about it on chat before. I probably get at least 5 to 10 solicitations a week, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, like, oh, I can get you 100 more customers. Like I know when I changed my LinkedIn tagline to not say that I was a coach anymore, that it dropped dramatically.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, do you have room for 5 to 100 new clients in the next week? Or the new one I'm getting at Escalante, but I've gotten at least 20 or 30 in the last probably 2 months. Hey, Mark, I've got tickets to this valuable mastermind, a couple free tickets. You can learn all this stuff. How would you like to come as my guest, you know, or whatever? And it's the exact same script. And I've gotten so many of these. I'm like, for me, I'm allergic to cold DMs. That's not how I want to build my business. I prefer to put my effort into the content, the message. I got a new client today. Actually, he's joining my group program in the new year. Great coach. He's going to do really well with it. He came to me because he's been following my stuff for a while. It wasn't me cold messaging him, twisting his arm, doing these lame scripts or whatever. I'm like, yeah, how did you find out about me? And he's been following my stuff for a while, you know, and that's a much better way to sell. I think than chasing someone and trying to use a bait and switch and, twist their arm and convince them to do something.
No, it's 100%. I mean that legitimacy, that's what I teach my clients is like, we got to play the long game. Right. So many times people hire me and like 3 months later, they're like, well, I expected, I was going to be a lot different. I'm like, how fucking long did it take you to get in the spot? You're 48 years old. Like, we got to give this some time. I always preface this now when I talk to people, like, you got to play the long game. Like, what's life going to be like in another 3, 6, 9 months? Yeah. It's going to be the short window. What things are going to start to evolve for you? You're going to start making you're going to be more aware of the self-sabotage that you're doing, because I'm going to be bringing these things around to you. We're going to talk about boundaries, tolerations, excuses, and things that we're just going to re-pour your foundation in the first 12 months. Probably the next 6 months after that is to start to build the strength and the resiliency in you to start taking proactive action as opposed to rewriting some of the scripts. And then after that, it's going to be the success of you staying consistent with the new applications. I'm not going to sit there and make you go through my programs. I'm not going to be a Tony Robbins and say, you need to keep me as your coach for the next 4 years. Generally speaking, I work with somebody for anywhere from 6 to 18 months, 24 months, sometimes in that nature. They have to rewrite some of their scripts, and they have to go out there and they have to go move forward. And so I invite people to sit there and say, okay, as you're building your business, continue to offer those nuggets, continue to over deliver, continue to offer those opportunities for people to sit there and say, let me try this. Let me see what Marc's all about. Let me see what Chris is all about. And I've had people like sit there and I'll do a workshop. I did a $27 workshop last year, got a bunch of people in there. I just did it totally cheap. I just decided to try it. I saw my friends trying it. I'm like, okay, it seems kind of ridiculous, but I know the information is well worth more than $27, but let me give it a shot. Let me try it. And then people are able to take those little nuggets and be able to try those things. And like, okay, they'll watch the Raw Unscripted show for a while. I'm like, oh my God, Chris, you give us so much value away from it that, we're changing people's lives, but it has to be that long game. It's not going to be that overnight success. It's not going to be the Amazon. It's not going to be other things of that nature. And when you do those things, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, when you do those things, there's more of a sense of pride. There's more of a sense of true personal development and change within ourselves, because we've stuck with it. We didn't just sit there and say, okay, I'm going to do this course, and in 3 months, I'm going to be a totally different person. I'm totally different women in my life, or men in my life, or clients in my life, and things of that nature. In a part of that, Marc, what are your thoughts on the whole niche or niche process? Because I still, to this day, it's probably one of the biggest interesting questions to ask business leaders and to ask entrepreneurs, because I still get like, you have to be so niche or so niche, that nobody else can go to anybody else besides you to get that. And I've had people sit there and say, okay, it's good to be general. And then as you're working with that person, zero in on the niche for them. What's been your experience, especially in the last couple of years with so many new people joining the personal development world?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with the whole, you have to niche you should niche to have a better shot at it. But that doesn't mean that you absolutely have to. There's some people who don't have a niche. I've interviewed people on my podcast, I'm sure you have too, that technically don't have a very broad focus and no niche whatsoever. I would look at it more with avatars, I would say, instead of niche. Sometimes people think when they look at a niche that they can only work with women who are between 40 and 60, who are empty nesters, who and they really narrow it down, like, oh geez, but what if a woman who's 35 wants to work with me, or what if a man wants to work with me, or whatever. I look at it more for content creation, helps to narrow your who your avatar is. So a good example, if you come up with something like if Homer Simpson, there's a good example. Everyone knows, even if you watch a few episodes of The Simpsons, roughly how old Homer is, how many people are in his family, what he does for work, what kind of beer he likes, Duff, right? Where he spends his off hours at Moe's. A bunch of things like it. So it's not like you're saying, I only want to work with a Homer Simpson type, which would probably be a real nightmare to work with, But when you're creating your content, picture yourself writing or doing the video, speaking to Homer with it. That could make it easier, because when you're creating content and you think you're speaking to a whole sea of people, everyone, 8 billion people in the world, can be kind of intimidating. It's not really very focused. But if you have a certain avatar that you're speaking to, like a Homer or whoever, it does make it easier to create it. Also, your niche can change. You could start over here, and then after a couple of years, you're like, or even less, I really don't like working with this in this niche. I think I might want to change it. I had a coach once I was helping who was a men's breakup coach, and he thought he wanted to do that because he went through a breakup. He wanted to help other men. And after a few months, he's like, just was beat down. He's like, I really don't enjoy this. The days I have coaching calls, I'm, tired and depressed at the end of the day, because he was very empathetic, soaking in a lot of their emotions. And I just said, you're not tied to it, do what you want to do. You're not writing in the stone. It's not like you're choosing a life partner here.
No, that's so true. And that's one of the things. I used to be a relationship coach. And after a while, I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, oh my God, these people are going to make me fucking kill myself. It's
that's
great.
Never good if the coach does that. Yeah.
No, it's true. And what you're saying, Mark, is like, I think is a great piece of advice. I mean, we've already been talking for 50 minutes. It's crazy. I can sit here and talk to you for hours, but I think it really is, that adaptability, right? That ability to pivot, to be able to sit there and say, okay, what can I do a little bit differently this week? What can I do a little bit differently next week? Having those plans in place to sit there and say, okay, if I continue to do what I've always done, Dr. Wayne Dyer said this, if I continue to do what I've always done, I'll continue to get what I've always got. And so I always look at myself as, as my own guinea pig. Is like, okay, Chris, what couple of things can I do in the next 6 months that will pivot the way I approach coaching customers? What things can I pivot in my business to create, to keep the spontaneity, to keep the creativity alive? And that's why I was telling you, I'm coasting more into consulting next year. So I've actually hired a coach, and she's rebuilt my resume. She's rebuilt my LinkedIn profile and everything else. I'm actually going to post it here pretty soon. So it's about, constantly looking at those opportunities to see what variability we can change within ourselves to get that extra leverage, to get that extra business, to really find what our lane is. And I love the avatar thing. I actually hired a business coach a number of years ago who had just was a friend of mine. She'd recently gone through this whole avatar creation. Like, this is when it was really hot. And she's like, Chris, I'd love to coach you on this. I'll give you a super deal. And so it was like 3 months. And dude, it blew my mind how detailed they get you to. Like, you have to know your avatar inside and out. You should be able to speak to that avatar. You should know, what they do after work. Like, she was asking me, like, what does your avatar cook for dinner? Where do they shop? What kind of clothes do they buy? And I'm like, oh my God, you're fucking driving me crazy. Like, I don't care about this much detail. But when you do get to that point and you're able to sit there and see, okay, like, people sit there and say, who are most of your coaching clients right now? And I'll be honest with them. A lot of them are people that are just like me. They were in the corporate space. They were comfortably miserable. They made 6 figures. They're really good, but they don't want to continue to sell their soul to somebody else to make their dreams come true, as opposed to like launching their own business or following their own dream. And so I'm finding that, but at the same time, there's got to be that ability to see what's exciting for us, and to be able to change and to adapt to find that lane that really sets us apart from other people, because there's so many other people out there selling a widget that when people find, that connection with you and the way you speak, that's one of the things that I've found, is that when I just do, like, my written posts don't get me a lot of action, but when I do videos, because I'm able to connect with people, they'll say, Chris, I really love the sincerity in your voice. And so I think for people listening and then watching this tonight, one of the big things that we can tell them as well is to keep that adaptability, keep that playfulness, keep that sense of adventure and that sense of courage in your business. Because if you could sit there and you sit there and go, okay, well, I did my marketing plan, I did my business plan, people should come flock to see me. I think we've said it very eloquently in this conversation tonight, is that you got to go out there and demonstrate that you're a bit unique and be a bit unapologetic. What are some final pieces of advice you would give to people, Mark, tonight, that are watching and listening to this, that are thinking about starting their own business, but they still have that trepidation of, what if I make a mistake, or what if I fail? What are some pieces of advice you could give them?
This is piggybacking on what you just said. This is something I'd heard someone say before, which really resonated with me, is that instead of looking at it saying, oh gosh, there's so much competition out there. There's, the coaching world, I mentioned earlier, 2.5 million new coaches in a year can get a little intimidating if I'm thinking, oh my God, or 10 million in 4 years. But shift your thinking that there's only one Christopher Rausch, right? There's only one Marc Mawhinney. There's only one, whoever. And there's 8 billion potential clients accessible by the click of a keyboard. So back in the old days, I say the old days, the Stone Age, when I started my real estate business back the early 2000s, you had to, if you're starting a business, for the most part, you're having to rent office space, buy equipment. You had to hire staff. You had to get old school marketing, billboards, radio, newspaper, whatever. Now you're in business. You buy a domain for $10 or $15, and here we go, off to the races, right? So that's it's democratized business in a lot of ways, which is great. So turn it around to say, hey, there's only one of me doing what I do, and 8 billion potential people. It's very hard to fail when you look at those numbers and look at it that way.
I love it, Mark. I love it. I appreciate you, brother. Where can people get a hold of you to continue the conversation and learn more about what Mark has got going on?
Yeah, so naturalborncoaches.com. That's the best one. Also, there's the Facebook group. We've got in the coaching jungle almost 25,000 coaches. So that's coachingjungle.com.
Yep. And they can get a hold of you on Instagram at Marc Mawhinney.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as busy on Instagram versus Facebook and others, but I am on Instagram. Yeah, wherever I'm online, search for me. Also have a lot of fakes. That's a whole other story. I've got a bunch of annoying, people setting up fake Marc Mawhinney accounts. So every week there's 3 or 4 of those. So that's probably not me if there's 5 friends on their account. Yeah, but anyways, that's the joys of online business.
I'm going to knock on wood. I fortunately don't have anybody copying me, because I'm guessing that nobody's going to run around wearing a bandana or something like that. But I think that's awesome, because people are so impressed with you, Mark, that they want to copy you. That's a sincere.
Well, they steal the pics. They're not putting, it'd be like going on your profile and just saving your pictures and starting, but they use different names. Sometimes use the same name, but then they use different names. And Facebook, Instagram, others often don't do anything because they're using a Joe Blow name or whatever. So they're not breaking our community standards. So, and a lot of my friends are dealing with this too. It's the joys of online business. So you can find me online. Like I said, you should be able to tell who the real Mark is versus the others. But yeah, I'm around.
Yep. They can come through me. They can come through Christopher Rausch.
There we go.
And I'll make sure that they get introduced to the right and the awesome Marc Mawhinney. Thank you, brother, so much for being here. I'm going to put you backstage. Don't go anywhere, because I still want to have a little chat with you, but I'm just going to end out the show real quick, and then I'll be right with you. Thank you. There we go, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Appreciate you guys being here, whether you're live or on the replay. Again, make sure you connect with Mark at naturalborncoaches.com, naturalborncoaches.com. If you're listening to this in your car right now, you'll be able to see it in the show notes, where we have that in there as well. And just encourage you, if you join this conversation in mid part of the podcast or the video cast, highly encourage you to go back and listen to the very first part of this, because everything that was laid out in this particular discussion is all building blocks of what it is that you can do. So I encourage you to take pen and paper and write down some strategies and some tips that Mark and I shared with you guys tonight, and start putting those into play. I think it's General Patton, said, a perfectly executed plan, never done is not as good as a violently poorly planned, executed today. And I know I just butchered the shit out of that, but you guys get the idea. Like, when people ask me in interviews, and I get interviewed quite a bit, they say, Chris, how did you go from being that 7th grade homeless dropout? How did you go through all those different experiences to go back and get a master's degree and to purchase houses and to have a successful corporate career? And the God's honest truth, guys, and I'm going to tell you this, you may not believe me, but I just continue to take imperfect action every single day in every single way. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the belief necessarily. But what I did is I had the tenacity to sit there and say, okay, every day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to show up and I'm going to go try to get my GED. I'm going to try to go to community college. I'm going to try to go to accelerated college and get my master's degree. I'm going to try to go into the corporate space. I'm going to go into international business. I'm going to try to become a coach. I'm going to try. Everything was that imperfect action every single day. And we just talked about this here towards the end of the conversation, is that flexibility and that adaptability. When you're looking at, you got to constantly look at your metrics and say, am I getting closer to or further from my stated goal? And of course, you can't expect overnight results, but what you can do is sit there and have a battle plan for yourself. Okay, I'm going to readdress this in 6 months. I'm going to see, how many more customers I'm getting, how much more, for lack of a better term, how much more in love with this process am I versus when I was just starting? What things can I change? Because ultimately, there's so much competition out there that you have to ask yourself, what am I willing to do a little bit different today that might change some of the output on what it is that I'm doing? And I know Mark was sitting there we were talking about the social media aspect of it. And in some situations, depending on where you're at in your journey, you need to take a look at that stuff. There's Clapper out there for the Gen Xers. There is Threads, there's TikTok, that's one of the big ones. So in some situations, we have to sit there and say, okay, where's my audience hanging out? And so one of the conversation things that we talked about tonight is that avatar. Consider hiring a coach to go through that process and find out exactly who it is that you serve. Where are they hanging out? You want to make sure you're where those people are hanging out so that you can have those conversations, whether it's in a group on LinkedIn. Like I hang out in some coaching groups on LinkedIn. So I've been in there and I've actually had coaches hire me because they're like, I can't find a coach to be able to coach me, but this no excuses coach thing that really inspires me. So hang out where your customers are hanging out and continue to evolve and to change those things and to brainstorm those things. Get accountability partners. One of the things that I'm doing right now is my accountability group coaching program. So it's stupid affordable. It's amazingly affordable, but we meet twice a month. You get an accountability partner. You're in a private Facebook group, so you're able to communicate and talk about things that are working and not working. You have an accountability partner that's going to ask you questions. When you have people in your life that are asking you, what is it that you're doing this week to move the needle on your biggest goals and your biggest projects? And you do that week after week after week. Guess what starts to happen? You start to focus in on a little bit more of the things that you really need to be paying attention to, because guess what? That accountability partner or me as your overall group coaching person is not going to let you get away with that stuff. And so when you think about, are you executing on your goals? Are you getting shit done? And you're not, you need to have the right people. You need to have the right leverage in your life to be able to sit there and say, okay, hey, put the donut down. Stop it, but also not burn yourself out. So I hope that all of this has really helped you in what it is that you want to do with your life. Because at the end of the day, guys, there was a book out there written by a hospice nurse, and it's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I'm going to be 55 next year in a couple of months. And so I think about how fast life is passing us by. You have to be intentional about the legacy that you're leaving every single day. What is it that you want to be remembered for? Who do you want to be remembered for? How do you want to make people feel? And then every single day, wake up and set that intention to be that person, because at the end of the day, you don't want to look back on your life and realize there was so many opportunities and so many chances that you could have taken that you didn't. Right. So go out there and take those risks, take those leaps. There's a great video out there. I'll put it in the show notes. It's by, Steve Harvey, the comedian. It's called Jump. It's about 1 minute and 23 seconds. And for minute, it's probably one of the most powerful videos I've ever watched in my entire life. And I've watched thousands of hours of videos because that's what I do to set myself apart. I listen to books and I read books and I have accountability partners. I have coaches. I have masterminds. I have all sorts of different things. But again, what investment are you making and taking in your life to set yourself apart? That's one of the most important things you could do. So I highly encourage you to connect with Mark. He's got an amazing program, an amazing podcast as well. If you're in the coaching space, definitely connect with him. He's the real deal. And I appreciate you guys. We're already here in December. Next week. Oh, actually, yeah, the next 3 shows. My friend Patricia is going to be co-hosting with me. So we've got some pretty cool people that are going to be showing up here next week. If you know who the band Rush is and you happen to know who the Peart family is, you might want to tune in next Tuesday night to see a very, very special show. So again, you guys can always check us out at rawunscripted.com. You can always check me out at noexcusescoach.com. You can check out the group accountability program, see if that works for you. Again, it's ridiculously affordable to make sure that you guys have skin in the game, but you're showing up every single week, and together we can make sure that 2024 is your year to kick ass and take names. I love you guys. I'm Christopher Rausch, your No Excuses coach. This is Raw Unscripted. We'll be back here next week. Go out there and be brilliant and connect.